Hey, everybody. Welcome to a first exciting view of our podcast from Urban Tactical. We're very pleased that you stopped by here and giving us some time and some love. And our first guest on this podcast is going to be Ben Wilson. And Ben is going to, Ben's background is quite extensive. And in light of, us heading into this very important week with the Remembrance Day coming up in Canada. We're very pleased to, that Ben, who is an active with the Winnipeg Police Force currently, but has a long history with military, both himself and with his family, and has offered to come in and share some of his stories of his military career. So Ben, welcome aboard, and this is our first version. You're our first guest. So
awesome. Well, thanks for having me.
It's great that you're here. So Ben, what is this? We talked about Remembrance Day a little bit. Started things off. What does this week mean to you with your past and your career in the military, and what does it kind of bring back?
Oh, it's very significant. Like, Remembrance Day has always been a huge part of my life. Like, I first joined the Army in 1998 is when I joined in. So from 18 years old, I've been celebrating Remembrance Day, even prior to that. And as you progress through the years, the people you've seen come and go, the people that I've lost through the service, it gets more of a significant impact with every passing year and everything I've done. So it's definitely one of the most important times to take a minute to just appreciate what those people that have come before us have done. Then that's dating back to all the major wars. Everything we have today, all our freedoms, it all stems from those sacrifices. So it in my life, it's extremely significant.
For sure. And thank you for that. And so let's kind of, dial back those years and kind of play back the movie, so to speak. And, 1998 is when you got into the service. So share what those early days were like. Did you come from a family of your dad? Was he in the military? Like, what kind of got you into it in the first place?
Well, it's funny. Dad was our CMP.
Okay.
He was a Mountie back in the day, and the last person in my family would have been my grandfather in World War II, my great uncle World War II, and so my oldest brother Timothy, he had joined. He signed up with 2nd Battalion PPCLI back in 1997. So Tim joined, and prior to that, like, I had no, the guy was just a poor farm boy, right? I had no inkling to join the Army. I would just live my life, and then he joined. And I'm like, oh, this is awesome. Obviously, I looked up to him because he's my older brother. Yeah, he's, as older brothers are, they can be a bit of an asshole, abusive, right? But he loves you. And so he joined up. I'm like, man, I'm going to sign up too. So I signed up for infantry, and then 98, I headed off to Waynard, Alberta, for my infantry base training, then on to battle school after that. And as a young man, 18, new to the world, fresh off the farm, it's a very eye-opening experience, and it's develops a lot of very important life skills, confidence. It changes you as a human being, because when you're indoctrinated into the military, especially in combat arms, with the infantry and like armored artillery, all those other trades, or really any trade, it teaches you to put the whole above the individual, right? You now learn that you're part of a team, you're part of bigger something else, and you give yourself to support that team. And when you're a young, selfish kid, that's very eye-opening for you. Mm-hmm. So it's highly recommended. Everyone should do that when they're 18.
Yeah. So when you said you came from farm town, was Manitoba?
Manitoba, yeah. Born in Alberta, Grand Prairie, Alberta, so way up north. That's my father served as a Mountie up in Olds, Alberta, near there. Yeah. Rough town. And then when I was young, we moved out to Manitoba. So I grew up about 2 hours northwest of Winnipeg by a town called Portage Prairie, which is by a town called Gladstone, which is by a town called Langerth.
Langerth, of course.
So way out there. Yep. And my closest neighbor was a mile away, and that was my grandma and grandpa on the farm. So I grew up basically free labor working at the farm.
Yeah. So, a big culture shock, I guess, 18 years old, leaving the farm, going to this, into training, et cetera. Did you miss home? What was like?
Of course. Yeah. It's, cause you're plucked out of your element, and then you're dropped in an area where you have no control now.
Sure.
Every aspect of your life is guided. So good culture shock, but you adapt and you learn and you embrace it. And then you get over the homesickness, and you just climb on board and enjoy the ride.
And you have relationships with, develop new relationships.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Like you develop relationships unlike anywhere else, because when you suffer with other humans, physical suffering, emotional suffering, when you can hit that adversity together and overcome it and push through it, it develops bonds. Even though you might not like the person as a human being, you still have that bond where you would do anything for that person. For sure. So it's very interesting that you don't really get anywhere else, I find.
For sure. So basic training goes on. How long are you for basic training for?
7 weeks.
7 weeks? Okay.
Or no, basic was 4 or 5 weeks. And then after that was battle school, which was the same time again.
Right. And then what happened after that? What kind of happened after that?
My first deployment was Bosnia.
Okay.
So that was in 2002. I started workup training for that.
Yeah.
Our role at that point with NATO was peacekeeping. It was, the war is over in Bosnia. I know the guys that were there early on in the 90s, they saw some shit and it was still pretty rough, active firing going on, or active combat in pockets, right? And when we got there, though, the war was done and we were just there to help maintain the peace and keep the world civil, basically almost like police officers.
Yeah.
Except a bunch of 18-year-olds running around the country with guns, running the show.
For sure. And how were you, you landed there, how were you, accepted by the locals? What was that like?
That depends on what side of the war you're on.
Sure.
Some people loved you, some people hated you. Our basic role was there. We go on patrol in the neighborhoods, right? Through the hills, speak with the locals. We would do something called op harvest, is where you would go and search homes and business for weapons, because there was just stockpiles and stockpiles of weapons. So part of the NATO's goal there was to help maybe disarm a little bit, to get rid of all those major weapons everywhere. And so you always have an interpreter with you. You go house to house, and the guy has to have a shot of Slivovitz, which is the local liquor, to make peace with them, and then you search the home. And for the most part, they were cooperative, but some people would hate you because they were on that different side, right? You'd have people like, fuck you, S4 Stabilization Force, which was the NATO umbrella, I guess we were called. And then someone would walk up to you. I'd have an old man just walk up to you and grab you and say, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Because the people that came before me in that country, they stepped in front of those people and saved their lives and prevented them from being exterminated. Because the genocide in that country was, people don't appreciate how good they have it here when you see, we were still finding mass graves. In the hills of Bihać, there was just cracks in the ground they had thrown bodies into, right? So that was something we were still finding actively in the early 2000s, were these mass graves of women and children that they had exterminated when they were moving through. Very complicated politically. If you ask me, Ben, can you explain the political situation or what spawned the war in the Balkans? I don't know. It's very confusing. Well, I mean, but you read up on it. It's there's a lot of stuff happened there. And,
I mean, the former Yugoslavia. I mean, to where it was to where it is, now and broken up. It's amazing that it actually took that short of amount of time, really, because it's such a drastic change. Yeah,
it was a very first world country, not too different than ours whatsoever. And it just took that right pressure at the right time, and it just fell apart.
So, what was it like when you came across your first, you talk about mass graves. I mean, that's probably something no one should ever see, but you're a young guy. And how did you handle that at the time?
Resiliency. When I got back, a lot of things affected me. There was no real, it wasn't like today where they screen you for PTSD, you talk to people, and there's a whole program in place basically when guys come back to kind of help mitigate that kind of stuff. There was nothing. It was just hey, welcome back. And things affected me, obviously. But you get by. You cope with it like you always do. And you do you bottled up and stick it down there, and then you wait for that to burst later in life. But I got through okay. Right. Again, my tour there, it wasn't like the guys that came after me going through Afghanistan and the things they saw, not even close to that.
Yeah.
Those guys are heroes, and they went through a lot of stuff, a lot of my friends, a lot of family. And thankfully that has changed for them, where they actually acknowledge that and they actually kind of work to prevent that trauma from happening from all those exposures to things in that environment versus mine, which is pretty stable.
So, I mean, from that experience and what you know now, do you feel the military does provide, adequate support for PTSD, mental challenges?
I hope. I've been out for 17 years. I have friends that have gotten out recently, and they're going through very proactive, very good rehabilitation for PTSD. So I think it does. It's very much at the forefront of people's thoughts when it comes to guys coming back from deployment and what they've been through to help prevent that. Because you look at North America-wide, the suicides, the mental health traumas people have, it affects you so horribly seeing things like that. Even for my own in Bosnia, I wasn't in active combat. I wasn't getting shot at. That stuff didn't happen to me. I didn't lose any friends over there, but you still see the trauma of what war does. You see people horribly scarred, limbs cut off. We had a guy living under a trailer in Behoch who the Serbs cut his tongue out as a kid. So he lived under a trailer and he'd come out, he couldn't talk because he had no tongue because they cut it out. And he would just kind of follow us around on patrol and stuff. It was, that stuff kind of sticks with you because you really see what humans are capable of. And it can affect you a lot.
Do you kind of think like back to those times and kind of wonder where that kid is these days and what did he turn into? Or
hope he did well.
Yeah.
I hope. Obviously, that country has changed a lot in recent years. It's a tourist destination again, especially Croatia. Croatia's way better off. I've always wondered what it'd be like to go back and see it now, but I don't know. I don't really. That's not something I've really dwelled on. But I just hope anyone there that I encountered, they have a better life. I hope.
For sure. And your contributions, definitely support that. So how long were you out in Bosnia for?
Just over 6 months, just over half a year I was there. Yeah.
And at the end, was it like, it's enough, it's time to come home? Or do you feel like...
Oh, yeah. It was, again, you're still far away. You keep busy enough, but there's a routine in the military, right? You're patrolling, you either are doing gate guard where you got to pull guard duty and you're sitting there man on a gate for 12 hours a day, and very varied, a lot of good experiences, had some really good training opportunities where we're there as well. But yeah, after 6 months, after 10 minutes, I was ready to come home. Your foot hits the ground, you look around, this place fucking sucks, light a cigarette, and then you just start the grind, right, to get through it. And I'm sure anyone that's been overseas will say the same thing.
Yeah.
So.
Good. Okay, so you came back from there. Then what?
Came back from that, and then I always had goals of moving out of Winnipeg or out of the prairies, getting to the coast. So I actually put a component transfer and I transferred to the Navy.
Oh, wow.
So I did 7 years infantry with reserve time as a part-time guy. And then I did some full-time work with them and then went full-time Navy. And then I transferred out to Victoria, where I went to fleet school and essentially became a air traffic controller on the ships. It's called an NCI op, where you handle all the radar systems. I joined the boarding party, which was our armed boarding operations we would do overseas and domestically. And I started that whole completely different adventure with them.
Night and day. Amazing, yeah.
Night and day.
Totally. Especially for a prairie guy, joining the Navy just seems so out of the box, right? And especially your prior career, being in the Army and then changing over. So was that, what was that process like? Was it pretty simple? Was it just simply transfer?
No, the transfer itself was easy, right? But then it was, whereas in the infantry, it's fortitude, it's physical resiliency, common sense. You can get by. And the Navy was all you gotta think and shit, running radar systems. You got all kinds of blips and bloops going on, and you're doing all the comms and shit. It was a compliment. I look back, I'm like, I can't believe I did that.
Wow.
I'm old now, so I'm dumb. You get dumb with the older you get, right? So, but back then, I guess I was smarter, and it was a very interesting experience.
What types of ships were you on, or were you based on?
So I served on 2 ships. I served on the Ottawa and the Vancouver. They are our anti-air, anti-submarine frigates. Okay. They're about 450 feet long, about 5,000 tons.
Wow.
Big ships, crew 250-ish, 220, 250, I think was the crew on board.
Yeah.
So I went through fleet school, which was, how long was fleet school? It was 8 months or something, I think, was fleet school. And by that point, as I transferred the war in Afghanistan, I really got fired up. And literally within days of graduating fleet school, I was on a 7-month tour overseas with the HMCS Ottawa for anti-piracy, anti-terrorism interdiction, and oilfield security, which in itself was quite the adventure.
And where was that stationed?
So we started off in Victoria, and we from there went to Africa, Middle East, hitting a bunch of spots on the way. So off Somalia, we do anti-piracy interdiction, where we didn't catch any pirates, to my eternal dismay, because I always get made fun of for not catching any pirates. We so off the coast of Somalia, because they're very, very active there. We do cool shit, like we would at nighttime we would shut all the ship lights off, and we'd make it rig deceptive lighting was called, and we'd make ourselves look like a little tiny shipping or a fishing boat, or like a cargo ship, to try and lure piracy in, so we could spring our trap. From there, and then we did carrier escort, USS Boxer Battle Group. We were one of the escorts to them, and the Boxer was not a full aircraft carrier, it's a marine ship. I can't remember what the term is for them. It's like a slightly smaller aircraft carrier, which is still fucking huge. We did them carrier escort for them, so just a defense screen for those guys with the other American ships. And then off the Horn of Africa, we'd do boarding operations. So we'd intercept, they're called dhows, which are little boats. They'd ferry back and forth between the Horn of Africa, or Somalia, Ethiopia, and then into Yemen. So a lot of Al-Qaeda operatives and members, they would ferry back and forth that way. So we would be interdicting them. So in a day, we'd go to boarding stations, gear up, take the rib over, board a ship. Super interesting. We had an American with us who was working for, I believe, the CIA, and they would take photos of everyone on the ship. Then they'd run through their supercomputer, and then if anyone popped up as a member of a terrorist organization, we'd grab them, bring them back. The Seahawk would show up 10 minutes later and whisk them off to God knows where.
Wow.
So it was very interesting.
Because you had some locals working with you? Is that... We
had interpreters, right, that would come on board with us. But no... Twice that happened. I believe it was twice that happened where somebody would hit the roll. Oh, yeah, they're wanted, and then bring them back, and off they'd go. But it wasn't just that. It was also oil field security, so just cruising around the oil fields off Iraq. We did rescue operations. We had an Indian vessel, a cargo vessel, sinking, so we had to rescue that crew. The XO went over with some of the engineers to try and prevent it from sinking. And they fought for hours to try and save that ship from going down. And then when all the cockroaches started scurrying off, they said, get out of here. So literally within minutes of the XO and our guys getting off, fucking right to the bottom.
Wow.
Had a U.S. submarine, I won't say the name, was doing some training, and they accidentally rammed a cargo ship and were taking on water. So we had to escort them to Bahrain, I believe, through the Straits of Hormuz. And that got the Iranians real excited. It was a hard life, because you're on a steel ship full of people, and it's kind of like Groundhog Day. That movie Groundhog Day with Bill Murray, how every day is the same.
Love that movie.
And I guess the Captain Hocko, good dude, Commander Hocko, he's the captain of the Ottawa. He every once in a while he'd play a joke where you play the song at Groundhog Day. What was it? Sonny and Cher, I Got You, Babe, I think. Every day the alarm goes off as that same song.
Every day.
You start playing that, which was a little
really
sadistic,
playing with you.
Yeah. But yeah, it was it's hard work.
What was like a day like? Like, what was that like?
So it would be, you get up, we were 5 on 5 off, 7 on 7 off was our hours. And the different hours that would depend on what theater you're on is what hours you worked. Cleaning stations had to happen because you had to clean every day, keep that ship clean. I'd have my duty station at ops. So I work in the ops room as an operator, run the screens, eyes and ears of the fleet. Briefing with the captain every day, where you'd go over, say, anti-air position or anti-ship positions. Iran had mobile anti-ship missiles, and they'd kind of follow us along the coast on their shore-based systems. You have to know where those are. The weather briefings. You might do some training. I was also gunner on the 50 cal, so I'd do some training with that once in a while. Boarding stations would happen where you would go do a boarding operation, flight ops. It was busy, very, very busy. In a lot of ways, it was probably the most difficult job I've had, just because of that environment. And you're never getting sleep. I think I would average 4 hours a day for 7 months.
Wow.
So yeah, it's anyone that's really served, despite all the abuse you take, being a sailor from every other trade, it's hard work.
Yeah. Your personal space is probably...
Oh, geez, I live in a coffin for fucking 7 months.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Wild. And so you did that. And so when your time was done, it was just your tour was done, and then you kind of left the Navy, or what was kind of
No,
the next step?
I stayed in for another 2 years.
Okay.
And that was, I think in the 3 years I spent, over 2 of them were at sea. And it's very high operational tempo where you'd be home for a few weeks, to go to sea for a week, home for a month, gone to sea for a couple months, and you kind of go back and forth. You go to Pearl Harbor for training, that's very rough, I know, but you go, hang on Hawaii for a bit and hunt submarines to help the Americans out. Like we did the American Submarine Commanders course where we'd pay enemy force and basically hunt submarines, which is super fun.
Yeah.
And then patrolling up the coast, we'd have like the RSGMP or T team come with us, their maritime team, and we'd go do interdictions up the coast. Looking for drug camps on the coast of BC, things like that, right? So there's always something going on. Or you're doing PR shit and going and having a soiree in Seattle.
Yeah.
Right. So.
Wow. So, when you look back at those times, you go like, holy shit, I can't believe I did all that. Like,
yeah, it was busy. It was good. It was good times.
Yeah.
Get me out of trouble.
Now that's amazing. So then you did that after, a couple of years after leaving those locations, and you decided to come back to Winnipeg. So what kind of brought you back here versus staying out on the coast? And
well, when I went to fleet school in 2006, my brother Timothy, the one who first joined, he had been serving overseas in Afghanistan on his second tour, and he was killed March 2006. So when that happened, that changed a lot of things for me. I left fleet school, and the first thing I did was like, I'm going overseas. I did the best I could, and I got on that tour almost immediately after. And then the damage that caused to my family, it was enough that I realized I need to return home to be with my family. So at that point, I started looking for an exit strategy, and I found policing. So I ended up coming back and signing up with Winnipeg Police, getting hired, and moving back here to support them and help kind of get them through that. And I've been here ever since. That was 17 years ago now, 16 years ago.
And I understand. So you had, outside of Timothy, you have another brother as well, who's also in the military? Yeah.
So we all were in the infantry together at first. Like Chris, my middle brother, I was the youngest. Middle brother Chris, we were in Bosnia together. Tim was in Afghanistan for his first tour, so all three of us were overseas, which my parents loved.
Oh boy!
We came back. Tim stayed in the Army. I went to the Navy. Chris went to the Air Force. So we had all the tri-service covered.
Wow!
My other brother Christopher, he went on to do another 3 tours in Afghanistan with the Air Force. I think 3 or 4. So we did lots of shit over there with them. He still currently serves.
Okay.
He's a warrant officer now, I believe. Winding down his career. I think he's at his 23rd year now. 22nd year now. So yeah, the boys got around. So
I guess Christmas dinner or Thanksgiving dinner would be lots of stories at the table.
Exactly.
Whenever you guys could all get together.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's amazing. Your parents must be super proud of, unfortunately your brother's passing, but still proud of the family and again, the contributions you guys have made. So
yeah, no, it was, we gave her, it was good. Good way to spend your 20s.
For sure. And you said, so now on with Winnipeg Police and long career with that. So that's.
Yeah, I'm on my 16th year now with Winnipeg Police. Started that 15th year on my 16th. That's been an adventure itself, right?
Another different bit of stories for sure. Okay. Well, thank you much. I think, is there anything else that we kind of missed as we kind of went through things?
Oh, I'm sure you missed tons of shit. That's just the ice. That's just the top of the stories. That's what comes to mind right now. But
that's perfect.
That's the basic.
Ben, thank you again for coming in today and sharing your stories. It's amazing career you've had and still doing with Winnipeg Police. We do, again, appreciate you coming in and again, just everything you've done for the country and your family. So thank you very much.
My pleasure. Absolute pleasure.
Okay.